All right, hi out there. Welcome to our very first SLJ Reviewers webcast. This is Reviewing Basics 101. We are beaming to you live from downtown New York City. I wanted to mention that this webcast will be archived and will be made available to all of our reviewers later this week. It's also going to be saved and archived on our brand new, soon to be revealed SLJ Reviewers website. So more details on that a bit later. This webcast is intended to cover some of the most commonly asked questions that we get from our reviewers. We're going to be talking about reading and evaluation, digging into writing and really crafting a review. We're also going to cover the kind of boring but really important mechanics of using the Online Reviews Center. And that's that website you use to actually submit your reviews. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the mysterious stars process. How do you nominate a star? How do you know if a book is star worthy? And then how the editors actually go about selecting those stars. So a few notes. If you are watching this from inside Google+, you can use the little chat function down there to ask questions at any time. We'll try to get to them as we go, and if not, we'll do it in a future webcast. If you're viewing from YouTube, there's two things that you should know. First is that you're on a slight delay. You're about 15 to 30 seconds behind, so if you are experiencing any technical difficulties, just be patient with us. Also, if you're on YouTube and you have a question, we're not monitoring that comment stream. So we instead suggest that you just email me. I'll be checking my email sort of on the side as we go, or you can tweet at me at Library Voice, all one word. And my email is kparrott@mediasourceinc.com. But if you RSVP'd, you already have my email. Now I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kira Parrott, editor of SLJ Reviews. I oversee the review department, and I also assign middle grade fiction, some YA, and our professional titles. With me here today, and you're going to be hearing from them in a few moments, is Luann Toth, who is our managing editor. Luann assigns our picture books, our easy readers, among other material, and she organizes our fabulous Day of Dialogue each year that happens around BEA. With us is also Shelly Diaz, who is our senior editor. Shelly is in charge of our young adult fiction assignments, as well as our bilingual books, and she's the brand new editor of SLJ Teen Newsletter. And finally, we have Manaz Dar, who is our associate editor. Manaz is in charge of all of our nonfiction titles, in addition to being the editor of Series Made Simple, that very involved supplement that comes out twice a year on series nonfiction. Some people who aren't going to be presenting today, but they are essential members of our review staff, and you've probably interacted with before or will soon. Kent Turner, who assigns our DVD reviews and is also our technical guru behind the scenes of our review center. Stephanie Close, who does our audiobooks and music. Daryl Gabarek, who does our apps and also Curriculum Connections newsletter. And then in our book room, we've got Ashley Williams, our editorial assistant, Stephanie Coy, and Julie Zimmerman, who are our book room assistants. These are the women who log in and mail out all of the many hundreds of books to you, our reviewers, every single month. Right now, I'm proud to say that SLJ has almost 400 active reviewers, the majority of whom are school and or public librarians spread all around the country. We even have a few international reviewers. Our reviews appear in the monthly print issues of SLJ, as well as on our website, on Book Verdict, and are licensed through places like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Follett, Baker & Taylor, etc. Librarians use our reviews in their collection development and in making those really critical selection decisions, especially in times when budgets are tight, which is always. But now let's really get started. So we're going to start by talking, and I'm going to transition for a moment to a slide. Bear with us. This is the first time we're using this platform. Let's see. Okay, so I think, can everyone see that? Let's hope so. We're going to be talking about reading and evaluation with Luann. Okay, I'm going to bring back Luann.
Hi, everyone. This is really fun. I wish I could see all the faces out there listening today. Goodness knows there's an awful lot of material that clamors for our attention on any given day. Carving out the time and devoting the requisite amount of focus to do a book justice is probably a reviewer's biggest challenge, especially if a deadline is looming. Some people are speedy readers and they can zip right through and sometimes skim over huge chunks of exposition and still kind of come away with an idea of what they've read. I know I am personally not one of those. I tend to be a tortoise. I need to start on page 1 and I make my way slowly and hopefully steadily through the rest of the book. That's sometimes hard when tackling a massive tome, and I find it vitally important to take notes, especially if I'm not going to be able to finish it in one sitting. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's a matter of what works best for you and is least intrusive to your reading and comprehension. I've never been very comfortable writing in books, even ARCs, but I find Post-it notes very useful when writing down characters' names, ages, places, relationships. I also highlight beautiful passages. I write down memorable quotes, including the page numbers, and anything else that strikes me as important or telling or useful in crafting my review. Ideally, after a straight-through read for the story, I like to go back and reread. If not the whole book, at least these important passages and understand the narrative arc and sentence-by-sentence construction. Throughout the process, I like to jot down impressions, associations, and comparisons that often make it into a formal review. I also try to make note of anything that doesn't quite work for me, anything that doesn't ring true or impedes my willing suspension of disbelief. I try very hard to keep the audience in mind as I reread, but a book always needs to speak to me first as a reader for me to fully appreciate it. Other note-taking techniques include Google Docs, Notepad, or even the Notes app on your phone that is very handy on the subway. I use it all the time, or the iPad. I know there's a lot of hype around certain books these days, but I try not to read anything about a book or other reviews on Goodreads or anywhere else before I sit down to evaluate it myself. Luckily, we've gotten fairly good about getting books out to people before they've gone viral. It's really important to read the book in its entirety, even if it's not your cup of tea. It's impossible to do. It is possible. It's very possible to do a fair and reasoned evaluation of a book that you would like to throw across the room. However, if for any reason you don't feel able to do a fair and thoughtful evaluation, please contact your editor immediately and it will be reassigned. So that's the readings part about this. So we're going to now transition.
Perfect. Thank you, Luann. All right. Hi, everyone, again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about when you've done that close reading, maybe you have some notes and you want to really start evaluating the book, maybe even before, hopefully before you actually write the review. So I'm going to hopefully share a screen with you. I have some slides. We'll see if this works. See if I can bring that up. Okay, so let me bring up my criteria slides. Give me one moment. Okay, so I think everyone should hopefully be seeing a big slide that says criteria, picture books. There's an image of one of my very favorites on there. So here's the thing. When you're looking at things like picture books and middle grade fiction, YA nonfiction, we could spend a whole hour individually digging really, really deep into each of those types of materials and genres and formats, but we don't have time to do that today. We will, in the future, do some webcasts related to specific formats. But for today, I want to give just a very broad overview of some of the questions and elements that you want to keep in the back of your mind as you're reading and evaluating. So, picture books. In a nutshell, you want to really be thinking about three major things. first of all, there's the text. So on its own, look at the writing. How is it? Is it good? Is it lively? Is it more contemplative maybe? Does it read aloud well? Read it aloud, even if it's just to yourself. Is it the type of book that reads well in group settings, like in a story time, or is it better for one-on-one sharing, maybe like a bedtime tale? Next, you want to look at the art. What does it look like? Now, remember, that seems so obvious, but you've got the book in your hand, but our readers who are reading SLJ probably don't. So you want to really paint them a good picture of what the book looks and feels like. What medium did the illustrator use? What's the color palette like? What style of art? Is it abstract? Is it expressionistic? Folk art style? And is the art effective? Is it good art? Is it good technique? And is it the sort of art that will visually engage the intended audience? Finally, and this is really the key part for me about picture books and most visual material, it's that intersection of the two. Does the art complement, support, or extend the words and the story? If so, how? Do the page turns fall in the right places? Does the pacing of the words and art together feel right? Now, librarians often consider themselves experts about books and reading, but when it comes to evaluating artwork, it can be a little intimidating. I don't know about you, but I never studied art history. That said, there's still ways that we can become experts on art, or at least about how to articulate art in things like picture books. One of the sections that we're going to have on our soon-to-be-revealed website is a blog post all about understanding art in picture books, and it really breaks down the visual elements. Will you walk away with an MFA? Maybe not, but you might come away knowing a little bit more about art and how to describe it. So more on that to come. Next, I'd like to look a little bit at fiction. Again, we could spend a lot of time going into each of these, but if nothing else, I'd like you to walk away today thinking about these elements here. When you're looking at fiction, be it a middle grade novel or a YA, you want to look at plot, which is what is the story, and is it good? Is it engaging? Is it interesting? Is it appropriate to the intended audience? Think about the pacing. Is it fast-paced, thrilling, edge of your seat? Is it perhaps more leisurely, contemplative, maybe cerebral? Does the story seem credible? Meaning, even in a fantastic universe, does it have internal sense? Look at the setting, the time and the place where the story is happening. Sometimes setting is merely background, and that's okay. And sometimes setting is really integral to the story and can almost be like another character. And that's something that you might want to note in a review. Look at the characters. How is character revealed? We often like to say, is the author telling us or showing us? How do the characters, particularly the main ones, the protagonists, change over the course of the novel? How and to what effect? The theme could be a little tricky. I like to ask the question, what's the takeaway when you walk away from this book? And is the takeaway, the theme, something that's worth imparting to kids or teens? Does it emerge naturally from the characters and the setting and the plot? Or does it come across as heavy-handed, didactic, or moralistic? And finally, the style. Is the writing straightforward, accessible? Is it lyrical, artful? What kinds of literary elements, motifs, or foreshadowing, things like that, does the author use? And are they effective or not? And is the writing engaging? Is it the sort of story that at the end of the day, the intended audience wants to read? Finally, another nutshell is nonfiction. So in addition to considering the previous mentioned criteria, many of which apply to nonfiction, there's also another batch of questions you want to ask yourself when you're evaluating factual and informational texts. You want to look at how the information is presented and whether the organization, presentation, design is effective or not. You also want to look at who wrote it and whether or not they have the authority to do so. What background do they have to be writing authoritatively about that subject? You want to look at whether or not the author documented sources, and hopefully they did, and whether those sources are reputable and up to date. All right, I'm going to close this slideshow. Bear with me a moment. I think I have you guys back on. Okay, so the big takeaway here is, will a single review mention all of those pieces of criteria. Hopefully you're not out there hyperventilating thinking you need to address all of those. That's not the case. But they are good things that you want to keep in the back of your mind before you write your review. And you'll notice that some elements will rise to the top and really be more important. And those are probably the ones you're going to want to focus on when you write your review. So now I'm going to transition to Shelley, who's going to talk about another kind of tricky aspect of reviewing.
Hi everyone, this is Shelley Diaz, and I'll be talking about how do you review a book that you personally don't like. So I think the first thing to think about is be aware of your bias. For example, I cannot stand animal fantasy. Many people know this, it's not a secret. I cannot stand it. So for example, if I was assigned an animal fantasy book for some reason, which might happen, I have to understand that I do have a bias and try to not be biased toward this book just because I can't stand animal fantasy. And this is the point where you have to take off your reader hat and, oh, that's me. So this is the point where you have to take off your reader hat and put on your librarian reader's advisory hat, which you all wear so well. And think about your avid animal fantasy fan. What would that reader find good in this title? And focus on the validative aspects the way you would for any other book. So be objective as possible. Think about voice, think about style, character development, plot, the same things that you would if you were reading a sci-fi novel, which I love, and just transfer that onto this book. And review the book that you have in front of you, not the book that you wish you had in front of you, which is something we like to say at SLJ. And don't think about, if only this book had this, if only this book had that. That's not what you're reviewing. You're reviewing this title and try to bring the strength, talk about the strengths and also the weaknesses of that title. And also, finally, speak up. Let us know, whether in the notes field, within the body of your review, or an email, hey, Shelley, you really made a bad choice there in sending this animal fantasy to me because I can't stand them. Please don't ever do that again. I like mysteries instead. So we will try our best the next time to make the right connection. And as Luann mentioned before, if you really feel like you can't fairly evaluate a title, then let us know right away and we will reassign it. So that's it from me. We're going to switch now to Manaz, who will be talking a little bit about composites. Ooh, composites. And we're going to have her take it away. Bear with me for a second and talk about composites.
Hi, everyone. This is Manaz here, and I'm just going to talk to you guys about composites. Let me switch over to my slides. Okay, so we're going to go over composites. So your first question might be, what is a composite? And a composite is very simple. It's just one review for two or more books that are on a similar topic or a similar theme. So if you're reviewing a bunch of books on animals or the weather or states, it might make more sense to write one review about all those books rather than 2 or 3 or 4 individual reviews. So when do you write a composite? So basically, if it wouldn't make sense to do individual reviews because you would be repeating information, that's when it's better to do a composite. And again, these are all generally books that are on similar themes. And one thing to note with a lot of composites, especially nonfiction, you want to kind of treat it as a set, focus on what the books are doing as a whole. With other books that are maybe more fiction, you might talk about what each book is doing differently. And even though the focus is on multiple books, if you guys find that there are errors or issues, definitely note, oh, hey, this book has some weaknesses, or this is the strongest one of the set. How do you know when you're supposed to do a composite? That's actually really simple. We will let you know if we want you to write a composite. We'll include a little note saying, write a composite. If you get a bunch of books that are not assigned as a composite, but you think it would make a lot more sense that way, drop us a line, let us know, because you guys are working with the book so closely. So you might have a better idea than us of, hey, this is going to get a better composite. And that's actually everything on composites. So I'm going to hand it right back to Akira now.
All right, thanks, Manaz. All right, so I am going to take over. Hello, everyone, again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about writing the review and what I like to call the anatomy of a review. So I'm going to also I'm actually going to pull up something that is super secret. We, as I've mentioned several times now, are working on the SLJ Reviewer website. So hold on, let me see if I can pull that up. And you're going to get a little bit of a sneak peek into this new website, which isn't quite ready for prime time, but we'll see if I can show you a little bit of it. So yeah, you guys are going to see something that no one else is just yet. Okay. Hang on, here we go, launching right now. Okay, so, and remember, I do know that our YouTube viewers are a little bit behind us, and I do apologize for that. So if we're talking about something that you're not seeing just yet on YouTube, just give it a few seconds. You're about 15 to 30 seconds behind us. So we'll try to bear that in mind as we move forward. So here it is, the sneak peek of our fabulous new website that's coming together. Anatomy of a typical, that's the key here, not every review, but in a nutshell, I would say about 95 to 99% of our reviews follow this basic formula. So the first part, you'll see the various aspects sort of highlighted in that orange font there. The first part of your review should be the grade level. Now, the frustrating thing about the Review Center is that there's no field for that, but we do ask you to include it at the very beginning of your review. Now, the grade level is your professional opinion. It's not what Fontes and Pinnell has to say. It's not a Lexile. It's not what the publisher put on the back of the book. It's who you, as the librarian working in your school or your library, who you would recommend it most to. Keeping in mind that we're making a recommendation not just to you and your patrons in your school or library, but to librarians across the country. And trying to keep in as wide a reader as possible, since children do read on many different levels. The next part, where we're really getting into the review itself, is what I like to call the nugget, the intro sentence, which is essentially a topic sentence. It can be a little tricky to craft, but it's essentially, in one sentence, this is what this book is about. So my example is, Smith's latest novel offers readers a plot-driven, high-octane sports tale. So you could potentially, read that sentence and skip down to the verdict and kind of know what you need to know about the review, but hopefully people want to dig in a little deeper. The next two sections are the summary and the evaluation. And sometimes these are distinct sections where, a reviewer will spend 2 to 4 sentences summarizing the book, followed by another 2 to 4 to 5 sentences critiquing the book and the evaluation. Sometimes they kind of run into each other, and that's okay, and that's where that variation comes. But I would say that you should not spend more than half of the bulk of your review on summary. You want to paint a picture. You want to make sure that the reader of this review understands what the book is about, but that shouldn't be the bulk of your review. The real meat is in the evaluation. Once you've kind of read closely, as Luann talked about, and dug into that criteria and really formulated an opinion, you want to talk about whether or not this book is succeeding or not. You might want to mention some read-alike and comparison titles. If you're talking about visual materials like picture books and graphic novels, you definitely want to comment on the artwork. A note about flaws. If you're noticing errors, and I'm talking about typographical errors or factual errors in the text, You do want to note that. Now, sometimes you'll want to note it explicitly in the context of your review, meaning that the reader of that review will see it. Sometimes you might just want to make the editors aware of the fact that, for example, on page 902, there's a typographical error, or something that is claimed to have been appendixed is not actually in the appendix. You can use the notes field in our review center to make us aware of that. All else fails, you can send me an email. Now, the last part of the review, which is new, we just added this in February, is the verdict. And I'm going to switch over because Shelley is going to dig into that.
Hi, everyone. I am back, and I am talking about verdicts. And a verdict pretty much is the final statement of the review. And it's pretty much, in a nutshell, whether, here we are, yes. In a nutshell, whether a library should purchase this book, thumbs up, thumbs down, and why. And it pretty much goes right at the nitty-gritty. If you can only say in one sentence or a few sentences or even a phrase, who is the reader for this book, who is the audience, and whether librarians should use their very, very tight budgets to purchase this title. And it should appear at the end of your review. You should preface it with capital verdict, all capital letters. And it shouldn't really come to a surprise to the reader. The review should pretty much come to that conclusion. It's kind of like a conclusion sentence. You should provide, before the verdict appears, evidence for why this book is recommended, or recommended for libraries with large budgets, etc., etc. And we have a few examples here on our reviewers website, our nifty reviewers website, with a few examples. And honestly, many of you were already creating these verdict-like sentences, but if you do have some trouble with that, the editors are here and we can help you construct a verdict statement if you're still having some trouble. So that is it about writing the review and crafting the review. We're going to switch gears now and talk more about style and grammar with our grammar guru, Manaz Dar. So bear with us as we switch to Manaz Dar. And here is Manaz.
Great. Thank you so much, Shelley. So I'm going to actually show you guys some really great slides. And okay, here we are. So our next topic is style. So you might be wondering, what does it mean to talk about style when we talk about that? And style is really just editing at the very nitty-gritty, granular level. Things like, should makerspace be one word or two? Should we italicize or put in quotes the title of a book? It's not about whether it's right or wrong. It's that every magazine or publication has its own style. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our style. And just before we begin, just letting you guys know that we don't expect you guys to know style. That's the job of the editors, but we just thought that you guys might want to know just for yourself if you're curious. But again, it really is something that we editors are meant to enforce. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Merriam-Webster dictionary. That's really kind of our Bible. And it's just, if we want to know how a word is spelled, whether it's, 2 words or 1 word, is it hyphenated, we always check Merriam-Webster. So if you're wondering, why are they making that choice, we're doing it off of Merriam-Webster. So another thing that we often try to stress as editors is the importance of not repeating too much. So because we're in a print magazine and space is at a premium, we try not to repeat unnecessary words. So if you're reviewing The One and Only Ivan, you don't need to say The One and Only Ivan is a great book. You can sort of start saying this novel is really great. Similarly, you don't need to say the book's author, or you can say the author's last name rather than the full name. We also try to avoid repeating the same word over and over again. So rather than saying this book, you can say this volume, this title, this selection, just so that we can kind of vary it up a little bit. Next, I want to talk about italics. So when we cite other books in our reviews, we would italicize them, and the same goes for movies or TV shows. We also use the series comma, and that is basically when you have a list of things, you would put a comma after each thing and then put the comma before the word and. So the right way is up here, and the wrong way would be under, no. So we just put that in because we think it makes things a little more clear, and we have a little humorous diagram for why you might want to use it, because if you don't put it in to this sentence, it looks like you're talking to the toast and orange juice. So, there are good reasons for why we have style. Another good point to note is that we don't put double spaces anywhere. So after you do the period, just put a single space before you do the next sentence. And finally, one last point is beware of dangling and misplaced modifiers and participles. One example is this one you can see here, where it says fast-paced and exciting, readers will enjoy this debut novel. The way it's structured, if you parse it closely, it looks like we're saying that the readers are fast-paced and exciting when it really is the book. So you might want to rewrite it to get rid of that modifier. But again, we always stress that really it's our job as editors to make these choices. So again, if you guys don't feel comfortable or don't have any interest in style, you should definitely, don't feel pressured to do it. But for those of you who are really interested in it, we, will have links to our style guides or more information on it in our newsletter. So you can watch out for that. Okay, and I'm going to hand it back to Kira.
All right, thanks, Manaz. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about something that a lot of reviewers ask us about and seems rather mysterious occasionally, which is our stars process. Both on your end, how do you nominate for stars? How do you know if something is star worthy? And then what happens from there? How do the editors actually make a decision? So I'm going to bring over Luann Toth and Shelly Diaz to tell you more about that.
Stars. Well, people are always very curious about our stars. And it's really pretty easy how they happen. Either the reviewer or an editor has noted that there is something unique. And by that, I mean that we've not seen anything else like it available for this audience, or extremely well done in comparison to other titles. So if it's unique or extremely well done, it's on our radar. It is then discussed widely by the broader editorial team. And we look at not only the quality of the writing and the scope of the content, but also the quality of the design and the ancillary materials. The entire package should be something that most libraries would want to have in their collections. And potential popularity is certainly not ignored. It just isn't our primary criterion.
Right. And I'm going to share some slides to give you more information on our stars process. So, okay. So our stars process, happy little star. And I'm not sure about the statistics, but I think maybe not even 10% of the books that we review even get stars. So the stars process begins with you. Reviewers let us know, whether in the notes field or if you're clicking on the little stars box within the review, if you think a book is star worthy. And for us, when a reviewer does that, that's number one book we have to read to consider for a star this month. So a book can be nominated through you, a reviewer. Also, if the editor, as we're editing the reviews, and we notice that maybe a reviewer hasn't nominated a book, but the review itself is glowing. So we also note that. And if other review journals have started a book, we do consider those titles. If there's some buzz, if it's a big award-winning author, those are all possible reasons for a star nomination. We add all of those titles to our Google Doc, which is shared among the editors. And then we go on to our decision by committee. So we have all of those titles that are on our Google Doc nomination Google Doc, and all of those titles are read at least by 2 to 3 editors. Picture books and nonfiction usually are read by all the editors. The longer novels are read most of the time at least by 2, especially if there's a book where 2 editors are not sure on. So we have about 2 to 3 meetings, and then there's a final vote. So this is a long process, and it's because an SLJ star is an important thing for us to give. It's an important honor, and but it really all starts with all of you as a reviewer, and you really have a strong say in what we consider for stars. So thank you. And now we switch to our last section of the day, and Kira is going to be back here with some info on our Reviews Center.
Thanks, Shelley. All right. So C is not that mysterious. It's a lot of work, but not super mysterious. So now what we'd like to do is transition to the last kind of chunk of our webcast today, which might be the most boring part, but it really is important, which is using our online review center. Many of you are probably familiar with it. You might have been frustrated with it at some point, but we're going to ask Manaz to show us a little bit of the ins and outs of using it. And if you are a new reviewer, this will hopefully be very helpful. We're going to go ahead and share again. This time we're going to share the Review Center website so that Manaz can navigate around. And let's see, hang on one second. I'm going to try to get this up on the screen. All right, now everyone should hopefully be seeing the Media Source Incorporated screen where you log in.
Hey guys, this is Manaz again, and I'm going to take you guys through our reviews database. So when a book is assigned to you, you guys all get an email letting you know that it's been assigned and the due date, and you can use that email address and click on the link, and it will take you to the database, and it's really easy. But let's say you don't have that email. I'm going to show you how to start totally from scratch. So first of all, you're going to log in with your username and your password. If you don't remember what your username or password is, or you don't have one yet, you should email one of us and we'll get you set up right away. So the first thing you do is, now that you're in, you are going to click the next button. And it brings you to a search screen. So the book that I'm looking for is called School for Brides by Patrice Kindle. And I'm going to search for it by author. That's typically the easiest way to search on our website. We put in the author's last name, and you put in a comma, space, and their first name, and you search. Searching by title can be a little tricky. You need to get every word right and put it in quotes to do it. So typically, we prefer to use the author field. So it's searching, and we see 2 products come up, and this is the one that I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Review, and that opens it up in a new tab. So I go down here to the reviewer box, and I can type in whatever I want. So I'm just going to type in some, sample war on text. And let's say that I'm totally done. I've typed in my review. I would go down to the bottom, and I would click the Save button. Now, it's important to remember at this point, it's telling me the review is saved, but it hasn't been submitted to my editor. And to do that, there's still a few more steps to go. But for now, all my work is saved. And this is kind of good because it lets you kind of pause and stop and say, hey, did I put in everything that I need to? So let's say I realize I want to add something else. I would go back and click update. Maybe I remember, hey, I didn't put a grade level on this book. You know, so I'll say, hey, this should be grades 1 to 3. And maybe I also really like this book. I love this book. So I would click the star button, and that would let the editors know, hey, you know what? I love this book. Maybe you guys should consider it when you're talking about your stars. But let's say I have, you know, something that I'm unsure about. I say, you know what? This was a really great book, but there were some typos on page 5. So I might say typos, page 5, problematic, and that lets my editor know, okay, I'm going to take a look at page 5 when I'm looking at this book. So I'm going to hit save. All my work is saved again. Now I'm finally ready. I decide, you know what, I want them to see this. I want the editors to see all this there. It's ready for them. I'm going to click update one more time, and then I'm going to go up a little bit to the submit review box. I'm going to uncheck it. I'm going to check it. I'm going to wait a little bit, and now I get a message saying review status has been updated to review submitted successfully. And that means that my editor has gotten an email letting them know that the review has been submitted. But let's say even after all of that, I realize there's something I just wanted to add. I didn't put enough about character development, or maybe I forgot my verdict, and I feel like, oh, I really want to add that. I can't go in and add it anymore. So you go down and you see there's no more buttons. You're actually locked out at this point. So the best thing to do in this situation is to email one of us and just let us know, hey, I need to add something to my review. Could you go ahead and do that for me? And we're always happy to do that for you anytime. So that's it for our review database. And now I'm going to hand it back to Kira. Thanks, Kira.
Thanks, Manaz. Yeah, so I know that some people get a little frustrated with our review center confusing the save and submit features. But like Manaz says, there is a reason that was sort of worked into the process. It was to give you that moment to sort of stop and think before you officially submit it to us. I just had a quick note about checklists. Now, for those of you who have been reviewing with us for a while, you know that in addition to the automatic email notification that you receive saying such and such a title has been assigned to you with the link, you also get an attachment on the email that is a checklist. So it'll often say picture book checklist or fiction checklist, etc. Now, those used to be required. And if you've been reviewing for a while, you know that you needed to download that attachment, fill out the Microsoft Word document, save it somewhere, probably on your desktop or your own computer, and then attach it on the back end. Now, we realize that that's a really clunky process and not very fun. And so we decided to not make it mandatory. We left the checklist there for the time being because some people really found them helpful and useful in that evaluation process, useful in kind of thinking about the book and deciding what you were going to mention in your review or not. But because so many people complained, including me, because I used to be a reviewer where I was an editor, we decided we wanted to instead replace that with something a little bit more sophisticated on the back end, a sort of digital checklist that you can use alongside of your review. Now, that's not actually happened yet. So until that does, it's still optional. However, I should note that you can always let us know something about the book, including a rationale for why you're starring it in that notes field. So if I'm missing any, I think that's it for today. I would like to open it up to questions. So as I mentioned, if you're watching through Google+, you can use the Q&A little chat function down there, and they should populate over here. We should be able to see any questions that you've submitted. Don't see anything yet. If you're looking at us through YouTube, we're not really monitoring the comment stream too closely there, but instead you can tweet at me at Library Voice, all one word. I'm just checking my email really quickly to see if anyone has emailed any specific questions. And we're going to just give it a few minutes because we know that our YouTube viewers are on a bit of a delay, so we want to make sure they have a moment to catch up with us, see if you have any questions. Cool. So as I'm waiting to see if you guys do have any burning questions, I could tell you a little bit about our upcoming website. So one of the things that we're doing is building basically a touchdown spot, a place to put resources like this video. We'll also have sections about delving a little bit deeper into evaluation of things like picture books specifically, or graphic novels, or nonfiction. We're also going to have a forum, which will be interactive and password protected, which means that you'll need a login and a password, which you'll register for to access. And not only will the editors be able to talk at you like we're doing now, but you'll be able to talk back. You'll be able to ask questions. And perhaps most excitingly, you'll be able to talk together. The forum will enable reviewers to seek out peer support and advice, which is something that outside of maybe a conference or an event, our SLJ reviewers have not had the opportunity to do before. So we're getting a group of beta testers together right now to come in and play with the website and give us some feedback. And probably in the next week or two, we'll be opening up to all of you and taking suggestions about what other content can live on the site. So I haven't seen any questions come through, so I think you guys are pretty satisfied. Thank you for bearing with us in this, our very first Google Hangout on air. I know it was a little buggy and some of the slides were slightly behind, so we will work on that for next time. From all of us here at SLJ headquarters, goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.